Welcome also to those accessing the meeting via the live stream on YouTube. During the live broadcast, members and officers are asked to please ensure that mobile phones are placed in silent mode. Only audio from the microphones will be captured on the live stream. Therefore, please ensure microphones are switched on when speaking and switched off when you finish speaking. Minutes will be produced in the usual way, and a recording of the meeting will be available to view on YouTube until such time as the minutes are produced. I will now call upon member services to report any apologies for absence, please. This is agenda item 1.
Good afternoon, everybody is present and correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 2. We're being asked to approve the public minutes at pages 3 to 10 of the agenda pack as a correct record of the meeting which took place on the 17th of September 2024. Can I ask any member who does not agree with the minutes to indicate that now? I see no objections to the proposal to approve the minutes as a correct record of the meeting, so they are now agreed. Agenda item 3. Agenda item 3 is to report additional items for consideration which the chairman deems urgent by virtue of special circumstances now to be specified. There are none. Agenda item 4 is to receive any declarations of interest under the local code of conduct or any in interest under the Code of Conduct in respect of any items to be discussed at this meeting. If you have anything to declare, please can you inform the meeting now? No hands are raised. Thank you. Agenda item 5 is an update from the Culture Officer Jamie Lee on the different strands of work the Council is working towards to advance culture, arts and heritage in the district. Jamie Lee, would you like to update the committee, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hello, everybody. So I'll start firstly with an update on the various elements within the Amplifying Community Art and Culture project. So that's the UK Shared Prosperity funded one, and it's actually coming towards its end this year. Firstly, and most recently, Fenland Culture Fund Round 2 opened and closed and has now been decided, the latest round. Again, it's a collaborative project, so it's funded by the Shared Prosperity Fund and Arts Council England. And we were able to launch it in person this time, which was brilliant, as we hadn't been able to do that before. We had an event to celebrate those people that were successful in round 1, to invite those that might have been unsuccessful previously and wanted some advice or support, and also anyone that was completely new to it and just wanted to find out more. That was on the 20th of November. Actually, our 2024 Fenland Poet Laureate opened the event with a reading, which was really nice, and people that had had successful projects in round 1 could either bring their artwork to show or they talked through what it is that they'd achieved. From then it was open up until the 13th of January. We did offer in-person support if people wanted to access it, but we found that it was much more common by phone and by email, and we received a total of 55 applications, up from the 42 that we had in round 1. And really recently the decision-making panel was just last Friday, so notifications are expected this week. I'm working on it at the moment, so we'll be letting people know the outcome. We were able to increase the budget available this round up to £55,000, and that was for grants of up to £2,000 each. And the panel have awarded this budget in full, so we'll be seeing a range of new projects, activities and investments across Fenland across the year. Also within the Shared Prosperity funded project, we've been offering a series of free workshops. So these have been open and available for people that are working, volunteering, or generally kind of supporting or looking to enter a career in the arts, culture and heritage sector in Finland. This has come about because of a identified need through the communication subgroup that there's been a need for marketing skills development. So the first of these sessions was back in November now in Wisbech about understanding audiences, and a company called Indigo came along and ran that session for us. Just recently in the town of March in the month of January, we held social media and email marketing workshop, and that was with the tech champions at Arts Council's Digital Culture Network. And then we've got another one coming up later this month, which will be in Chatteris. A bit more of a specific theme on this one. It's about practical strategies for data and ticketing, and those organisations that they might be looking at box office systems, or they might be a point where they might be exploring different types of ticketing models or pay what you feel initiatives. So that will be interesting. And we found that all of them so far have been very well attended, and it's been a sort of double-edged thing really, because not only have people been able to access high quality professional education for free, but there's just been a benefit in getting those people around a table like this and to meet each other, to share, learn, network. And finally, within this Shared Prosperity Fund that we've got going on at the moment is some funding that's been made available for a new community creative wellbeing project to be in Whittlesea. I will come and speak on about that in a bit more detail later on, because it's in connection with one of the subgroups for health and wellbeing. Chair, I'll ask you now, do you want me to move on to my next point, or would anybody want to ask questions more specifically relating to the Shared Prosperity Funded project?
Does anyone have any questions related to that? If not, we'll move on. Thank you.
Okay then. So next part is a reminder really of what the Fen and Culture Partnership is and how its subgroups have been getting on more recently. So firstly, the partnership itself, it's had one meeting since this committee were last together, which was in January. The membership is still at 11, and it represents a whole range of people working collaboratively, so that includes FDC members and officers, also artists, funders, cultural organisations, community organisations and venues, all within Finland. That partnership still continues to meet in person like this. Capacity still allows for that at the moment, and having been at a point where we had to do a lot online, we still find it's really beneficial. And that group travels around the district, so we try to get around as much as possible, and it also shares the chairperson duties, which has worked well for both shared ownership and capacity of that group. Generally, it has meetings every other month. It's a little bit like this in that we reflect on progress and hear partner updates, and I will have recurring agenda items like I do for you all, but also sometimes when there's deadlines upcoming, there's more specific conversations that we need to have to get a piece of work done together. And it's about planning ahead really for all of those organisations and the work that they individually do to help deliver and develop Finland's cultural strategy. And so you'll know a little bit about this from previous meetings, but last year they decided to, essentially there was a couple of themes and topics that they wanted to devote more time to, and it was coming up as a recurring kind of conversation that we couldn't give enough time to. So they've established two subgroups. The first one of those was communications and marketing, and their last meeting was in October, and that is the group that kind of kicked off those programme of workshops that I mentioned earlier. So it was through a piece of work that they did really early on that there was a survey completed by people that work, or again volunteering is often the case, local, creative and cultural heritage sectors here, and that's where they identified the need pretty much straight away, that there was a need for increased skills to focus on communications and marketing and anything kind of in that realm, and that's why we've been able to put that funding together to get that started. And that group has also come to the agreement of some of those organisations have started using the hashtag #FenandCulture on some of their social media posts. They were looking for an easy way to kind of help with cross-promotion of events and opportunities and share what it was that each other was doing. So there's definitely still some learning to happen there, but it's starting to kind of move in the right direction with little things like that are making a difference. And moving on to the health and wellbeing subgroup, this group's actually got a meeting next week. It's expanded to a much broader range of attendees, I would say, that one. So it still has the artists and the art organisations attending, but also social prescribers, the How Are You Fenland service, the Integrated Neighbourhood, who have been very supportive, and also the police, libraries, youth workers are all represented. They are the ones that I mentioned earlier with that project in Whittlesea. So they've proposed and agreed that they'd like to make this happen. And it's being aimed at supporting people who are struggling with isolation living in the town, particularly those that whilst there are often lots of creative activities happening, particularly that group wants to look at supporting people that might necessarily not participate and they might find it difficult to get out and go to something that's already existing. So essentially the project is looking at artists who are currently being recruited, and they'll be commissioned to produce a number of creative packs that then will be distributed through partners at the health centres, through our contacts within the group itself, the children's centres, schools, the library, through those social prescribers that are part of the group, and also food banks. And from that, then people will have an opportunity to get involved in a project from home independently, if it's something that they might, maybe it's for mobility issues, or maybe it is confidence and it's an isolation issue that means they're not able to get somewhere typically, but they'll have the opportunity to take part independently, maybe at a distance. But alongside that, there will be a digital network with informational instruction videos that the artists will produce, putting a face to the project, and hopefully becoming a little bit more welcoming, letting people know that it's human and there's people involved in it. Because later down the line, there'll be in-person workshops that people will hopefully be able to come together physically at as well. So this is the project I mentioned earlier. It's with the remaining UK Share Prosperity funded budget that we've got available, and it's due to get started very shortly. That group is meeting next week to progress this. I can finish on that point before I move on to the next one, Chair, unless anyone has any questions on any of those.
Does anyone have any questions on? Councillor Nawaz just pipped you to the post there, so I'll ask Councillor Nawaz first, and then you, Councillor Hicks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I'm really looking forward to that. Sounds like a good, exciting project for the residents of Whittlesea, who've been long deprived of a lot of social benefits and events. My question is that once this funding finishes, what happens then? Please. Thank you.
So the never-ending problem, really, with projects like this. So the Shared Prosperity Fund itself has been in a place a long time now. It's a 3-year project, so we have been a little bit used to that. But I will come on in a little on my next item about some other project funding that we're hoping we're going to hear news on soon that might be able to pick up some of this stuff. But also with the Whittlesea project in particular, it's almost a bit of a pilot as well. So because we've had good connections with health-funded projects previously, like the Express Yourself project, we're able to take that learning essentially, and we can produce as good a case study as we can to then look to fundraise additionally going forward. And because with the Whittlesea one this time round, we've got a substantial amount of funding to get this started off well to a good start, and hopefully that will then be able to kind of fuel us to continue that if it's what the town wants and wants to continue with.
Yeah, if I may, I don't know whether this is going to be relevant or not, but what I do know is that the Cambridgeshire County Council is sitting on £89.8 million of Section 108 money. Now, I believe that part of that can be used for community infrastructure and social purposes, for social advancement. There's also SIL money. Could this group access that money? Have you tried it, or would you like to try it, please?
Sorry, can I just come in there? Because SIL doesn't apply to Fenland, but I'm going to defer to the Monitoring Officer, Carol, to just come in on this point.
No, quite right, Councillor Senate Cloughs. We don't levy community infrastructure levy in this district. Some of the other district councils do, but Fenland District Council doesn't, because it hasn't been shown to be viable in our area. And in terms of the circa 90 million you refer to from the County Council, it'd be really interesting to understand the source of that funding, because it's something we can follow up on in terms of inquiry, but I'm not clear how we could if that exists or how we can access it.
Thank you, Carol. Dr. Nawaz?
Yes, I meant the Section 106 money, which that amount remains unspent, out of which I think 78 million is for education, and that really belongs to the constituent councils, is my understanding, but the figures are available online. And this is the money hasn't been spent. There is a clause in which it says that the developers can ask for that money back if it is not spent over a certain period. So I'm just wondering, rather than it going back or just building up, perhaps we as a constituent council could at least ask for the details, if not ask for some share of that money. Thank you.
I know you're desperate to come in, Councillor Hicks. Can I just let Carol in on this point, and then I'll go to you?
Thank you. We do have some county councillors sitting around this table that might be able to assist. But money for Section 106 attributed to education is usually for school places, and providing additional school places that are directly as a result of the burden of the development that's going to be built. Having said that, though, we can certainly inquire of colleagues at the County Council to see whether there's any monies left over that could be earmarked for community activities. My sense is that wouldn't be the case, but that doesn't mean that we can't ask the question.
Thank you, Carol. Councillor Hicks.
I'd just like to answer that previous question. As I understand the planning laws, because I've sat on the planning committee myself, each planning application, if they're over so many houses, they ask for a Section 106 contribution for certain things, and that's ring-fenced for that particular project in that particular area. We can't access that unless we ask for it at the time of the planning application to go for a certain project. It doesn't work how you think it is. It's not just one big pot, it's many little pots for that area, and how it affects that particular planning application. So it doesn't work like you think it does. That is that money they ask for schools or recreational equipment or what have you, and it's just ring-fenced for that one project.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Count, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's a lot of people are saying the correct things. There's a bit more information. So first of all, Section 106 comes in many forms. It's organised per site. In terms of County Council, they tend to ask for things highway specific to do with development. But in terms of the education pot, they tend to levy per household to contribute towards the building of schools. Now, if you have a massive site, it might be very specific. We want a school on that site, and that's very specific about it. In other cases where it's smaller developments, they might ask for £1 per dwelling to go towards schooling, which might be used up elsewhere. Now, as the pots get used, as you quite rightly say, they are time limited. When they cannot automatically go elsewhere. But I think it's very prudent of the District Council at this stage to say, ask the County Council to list all of the Section 106 monies being held on behalf of us, when the end dates are, and whether they plan to spend them by then. So we know a big project such as the secondary school at Thomas Clarkson, the new adjoining one next door. The SEND school in March has been paused by the present Labour government, and we have no idea what's happening there, but no doubt they would be wanting to dip into that money because the government does tend to use that money. But I think it would be absolutely right for us to ask, how big is the pot? What specifically is it for? Is it ring-fenced? And what is the time limit on those sites? If it gets towards the point where it's not going to be spent, you cannot automatically move it, but you can speak to the developers, etc., and say, actually, for the sake of the community, we'd like to move it from this box to another. And there shouldn't be a reason for them to say no unless they go back and start arguing about viability at a later stage. Because if they've agreed to commit a sum of money, they may already have handed it over. Then as long as it's still for the community, surely it should be able to move across. So I think it's a very valuable question. I think it's one we should follow up and see where it takes us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cowan. And I think I'm right in saying that Fenton now has a new or fairly new 106 officer. And Councillor Nawaz, you sit on Whittlesea Town Planning. So obviously you have access to discuss that in your role there. Would you like to come back in? I can see you'd like to add.
Yeah, thank you. Well, actually, part of my question has been already asked by Councillor Count. I have already asked the County Council for this information through various other committees, but I think rather than my asking in person, it may be more effective, as Councillor Count has suggested, for this committee or the FTC itself to ask. Thank you.
Councillor Nawaz. Councillor Hoy.
Yeah, we don't necessarily need to ask because I've got the spreadsheet myself, which has got every single application and what it's for, spend dates, whether it's been committed and how much. The actual total balance is £958,452. So it's actually more than we think. So I think, I'm happy to forward this to officers and so you know, but I think we need to ask, not necessarily for timelines, but actually how it's being spent specifically. So for example, 140,000 of it is for the Wisbech Academy. That is a government free school. So the government should be paying all of the costs of that. So what are the county council spending 140,000 on? Sorry, more than that, because there's another 90,000 early on. March West Primary School, they say, has had 250,000. I don't know if any of you March councillors know about anything in March West happening, because I haven't heard of anything. So they've identified these projects. They say Neil Wade apparently is going to get £112,000, but they don't. They haven't seemed to have sort of specified. They've just kind of left it blank. So I guess if I forward this to you, Carol, if that's okay. But I think we actually need to write to them and actually ask them to drill down into the detail, because just naming a school doesn't really help. Also, I wonder about, and this I know we're going off of tangent a little bit here, but what is the legality of us not, do we legally have to provide 106 contributions for education? Or could we theoretically not do that? I'm not sure we have to, because I'm sure there was a discussion about this before. They can ask for it, but I don't think they can legally force us to.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Carol, would you like to come in?
Just briefly, I think this has been an issue that members have raised recently, and we have taken some legal advice on that to give members some clarity. I don't know if that was presented to the last meeting of the Planning Committee. Councillor, oh, you're not on it anymore, excuse me. So what I'll do, Councillor Hoy, is following this meeting is I will ask the Head of Planning to circulate that advice, either to the whole committee or specifically to the Chairman and Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Carol. I think if there aren't any more questions directly related to the funding issue that Jamie Lee was talking about, we'll move back to this agenda item. Councillor Nawaz, do you have another question?
Yeah, just to reiterate, the question as asked by Councillor Count, does that still stand in addition to Councillor Hoy's?
Which question of Councillor Count's are you referring to?
That we asked the County Council about the details of the Section 106 and SIL money that they hold, and in what different pots, and maybe even that, or why hasn't it been spent?
I think this is a discussion, and I can see that Carol's made a note of it, and I think this is a discussion that as members we can have outside of this committee, possibly something that can be discussed at full council. So I'd like to thank you, Councillor Nawaz, really good points. I'd like to return to Jamie Lee now so she can finish on Councillor Count.
Yeah, this was a question about the presentation so far. So can you just help me by perhaps give me a practical example? you were saying that various artists will be commissioned to develop some kind of project pack that individuals could take home, and then they could do this at home and somehow use this later on. I couldn't quite envisage what that meant. So I didn't know there's a practical example, because just in my head I'm thinking, and this is the naivety of not, being a natural artist or anything. I'm just thinking a pencil and paper, just draw something, What's the difference between that and something that an artist has been commissioned to develop as a pack that they go away with? So I was trying to get some sense of what we're talking about here, really.
Thank you, Councillor Cowan. Excellent question. Jamie Lee, would you like to elaborate on that? Thank you.
It is a good question, and the project proposal being in its infancy, we don't really know until the artists that respond to the call out kind of pitch in with what their specialism is, what type of art forms they work in, how they could envisage doing that. But I guess an example that has been talked about early on could be something textile based, and it might be that a pack is created with materials for crochet, for example, that is then sent home to a person. They spend a few weeks, they use the tutorial, that's a video that the artist has put together to let them know kind of what they're following, what the project is going to look like, and then it might be in a few months' time, when that physical workshop happens, that everyone can come and bring their individual crocheted square that they might have made at home by themselves into a bigger piece together. That's just an example kind of off the top of my head, and until the artists that respond to the call out with their specific kind of art forms and the things that they're good at, we don't really know what that will look like, but that's kind of how I would imagine it might take form.
Councillor Cowan. Thank you, Jane.
Yeah, this it leads me into a bit of a concern, really, about the amount of funding involved and what we're actually paying for. If I go into a place called, I think it's called Hobbycraft, but other stores are available, or The Range, there are rows upon rows of craft kits of all different sorts. So some might be knit a little teddy bear, some might be scratch off the little bits and reveal a picture, some might be paint by numbers. Rows and rows of these, from very, very small amounts of money to a Lego kit that costs over £100, which I find bizarre. So what I'm just wondering here is how much we're going to be spending to deliver stuff that can be bought off the shelf elsewhere, or it won't be identical, but could be bought off the shelf elsewhere. And is there added value from having the artist involved, and somehow there's a follow-up that is elusive, you don't get from the store-bought product? So that's the kind of, what's the difference that we're making here question.
Thank you, Councillor Cowan. Am I right in thinking that you're feeling your way towards a question which asks, where does it become art and where does it become craft? No?
No, the question, the direct question is, where is the added value here above that comes from the taxpayer's input above something that is bought in a store that basically starts you on that same path?
Thank you. Jamie Lee, do you want to respond before I bring in Councillor Hicks, who also had his hand?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I think I understand your question. I would say again, my example was kind of my example to fill in what it looks like at the moment. Whilst that proposal's still out, it might be that the artists come forward with very different ideas. So my art form is photography, so I can't imagine how I would do that in a pack. But I'm sure a visual artist might come up with something completely different. But what I would say is that the packs, the physical materials in those packs, is only really a small element of what that whole project looks like. I think really the benefit of it comes from working with the doctor surgeries and with those groups that mean that we can hopefully engage with people that wouldn't be turning up and wouldn't necessarily pick something like that up off a shelf and think that that's for them. But also, because this is a project of the Health and Wellbeing Group, it's about trying to kind of use the known benefits of things like arts and creativity and crafts to support mental health and wellbeing. By showing that people can do something like that, they can then come together, they can learn from an artist, so they'll be commissioned to put together these videos, kind of host a bit of a advice and networking, sharing piece of work across the project to give people support and encouragement. But then those 2 in-person workshops per artist and per art form as well. That means people are going to get together hopefully in a room, and physically take part in something. And that's where the difference is really, rather than sort of freebie packs or kits that we sort of hand out and let people do with as they wish. Is part of the bigger project. And by doing that from a cultural strategy perspective, local freelancers are hopefully going to get a job out of it. They're going to be able to work in their town maybe, or in their area, and run a project for local people. But that also means longevity wise, if they've had that experience doing that, then we could support them as cultural strategy to look at how they might be able to continue to self-fund that, or income generation models to continue that going forward. So I hope that makes a bit more sense of what might be different about it.
Councillor Count, would you like to come back?
Yeah, the only thing I would say, so I get the point that we're on a journey here, and we don't know exactly what's going to come out of that, but it is that health and wellbeing element that may or may not make a difference. We will find out when we look back and say, and get maybe some qualitative stories of saying, this is how I engaged, this is the effect it had on me, and then we can compare that mentally, and we say, well, what would have happened if it wasn't there? Would we have got the same? So I think we'll have to wait and suck it and see, when we get some evidence afterwards, see whether it was useful. But thank you for the feedback. Thank you.
Excellent points, thank you. Councillor Hicks.
This isn't really a question, but this is information what I'd like to make you aware of. Regarding the events workshop, any sort of, because I'm going back to your point about trying to promote these artists, I've run a Facebook group called What's On in Cambridgeshire, and it's just for the culture, arts, gigging, all that sort of thing, all the arts. It's currently got way over 4,000 members on there, and it's growing rapidly. And you're quite welcome to put that on, and you can advise your people as well, that they're quite welcome to use that portal. The only thing I would say is they need to just put a preview up beforehand, because I need to know what goes on there. But they're quite welcome to use that, to help them promote these events. Okay? Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Does anyone else have any questions on this agenda item before I return to you, Jamie Lee, to finish agenda item 5, please?
Okay, thank you. So yeah, this is my final item within this item, but it's just a reminder and an update really on the Fenlands application to Arts Council's Place Partnership Fund. So this has moved on really dramatically even since this committee was last together, and I know not everyone was at the last one, so just to kind of fill you in for a reminder, Place Partnership Fund is one of Arts Council's most significant funding streams, and following a huge amount of work over a very long time, most of last year and a significant portion of the year before as well, we submitted an expression of interest to this fund, and then we had quite a long wait to find out whether we were accepted, which we did in October. We were asked to then submit a full application, which we then did at the end of November 2024. So since this committee was last together, it's really come a long way because we were still in that waiting period the last time we were here. The project itself is about step change. It's about making a real difference for Fenland. As we're a priority place for the Arts Council at the moment, we have been very heavily supported by them to go down this route of this application. They've supported FDC directly with the kind of thinking behind strategic kind of planning for over a long course of time to kind of get to this point. And the Fenland Culture Partnership and others have kind of come together to put this application in for the district as a whole. So partnership, as is the title, is kind of the main point of what the project is about really. But the lead applicant has been selected as Clarion Futures, with FDC as strategic partner, as well as a number of others, levels of organisations, a level of groups, because the project was kind of designed with varying levels of partnership so that we were able to bring in those people that could invest time and skills alongside those partners that had kind of actual cash match investment on offer as well, because the project required 15% cash match. So a lot of work to kind of get to that point, and we're in that horrible waiting period at the moment, but we should know very soon. But if successful, the project will be a fairly quick turnaround. So we'll be starting in April of this year, and it will last for 3 years, finishing in 2028. It's going to create quite a lot of change, because at the moment many of the partners, groups and organisations that work on the things that I do will then be kind of specifically working on this one project together. So it's going to mean that there's a lot more targeted work, I would say, over the next 3 years. But the two main areas of focus are about improved infrastructure and cultural leadership, and that's in readiness for some new festival programming at the end. And when I say at the end, that will be summer 2027, which feels away, but it isn't. So essentially what that means is the two halves of the project, if you like. The first one will start from day dot and will be about investment in those current and future cultural leaders of Finland. And there'll be a leadership development programme from them to engage in. So similar to those training workshops that we're already doing, but really ramped up. And they'll be able to go and experience new things, take on new education, meet new people, and try and give everything we can to invest in our cultural workforce here. And that's all whilst in the background knowing that we're going to be doing this festival programming in summer 2027. So that will be some new stuff, that will be some working with those existing events, really diverse programme hopefully, including various art forms, and investing in young people but as future arts leaders, building networks, continuing to provide that skills and training support that we know is needed, so that hopefully the step changes. Finland is more resilient, more confident, more ambitious. The total ask to Arts Council is £420,000, but that is an element of a project more in the region of £800,000, and we are expecting to find out this month. So hopefully by the time this committee is next together, we will have some good news to share. We don't know yet. Thank you. That's it for me on this item.
Thank you, Jamie Lee. Before I come in, would anyone else like Councillor Hoy?
Yeah, just on the partnership, what work have you done with town and parish councils? Because I know myself and Terry Jordan attended the workshop at, I can't think what it's called now, above Panini's in March. And we did say about obviously offering venues and match funding, and I don't believe we've heard anything yet.
Yeah, you're right. So we had a workshop in March Town Hall, and first one of those connected kind of to this stage of what the project has now become was in April of last year, and all levels of local authority were invited, including all the towns. So that's where we were able to get people together and find out really what it was they might want to put forward for their towns. We have had venues and organisations in all of the towns come forward, but not council specifically.
I specifically wrote about, I wrote loads of things about the town, and Terry did as well. I put the post-it notes there with him and offered that, so I don't know why that would have got lost. Because we did it on, there was lots of tables, and on every table we said venue match funding higher. And I mean, in a way, it's no big deal. It saved us money if we haven't got to give any match funding. But it just seems it's not really a partnership if we're not being worked with as town and parish councils, really.
Wouldn't have been lost, so everything from that session was captured and put forward into then what happened, but the expression of interest was painfully small, to be honest, and then the actual main application was huge, so that's all captured, it's all within that, and because the nature of the project means it is all of Finland, so none of this is targeted on one particular place. Until we know what that's going to look like, and the projects and the strands and the art forms are all going to determine a lot of that themselves as they go through the 3 years of the programme, to pick where places might actually be venues. But I would say in terms of the Arts Council, we know what Grantium's like in terms of adding on locations. All of the marketplaces, for example, are included. All of the cultural venues and assets as we know them already exist are included as options if we get to the point and if we get to the groups wanting to kind of take that route.
Yeah, it's just I'm not trying to sort of labour a point here, but I just feel that often the biggest problem we've had in Finland is having things done to us, and I'm just really concerned this is going to go exactly the same way, because it feels that there's a few organisations that seem to be involved in everything and no one else ever gets a look in, and it's very disappointing to hear that the town and parish councils aren't involved. I know obviously not all towns necessarily are proactive, and I don't always think that's necessarily on purpose. I think it does take a lot of time to build that confidence, and I know obviously in March they're trying to do the summer festival, and there was a discussion about that. And I just think I wouldn't, if I was Chatteris or Whittlesea, I'd be looking at this and thinking, actually, why bother? Because other town councils who do actually like put money into these things and put on stuff pretty much on their own. I mean, admittedly, FDC do give venues, but other than that, pretty much alone, just get then just passed over. So I don't think, if I was them, I don't think I'd bother. I think, what's the point?
I can understand the point, absolutely. I would just say that they've all kind of come along the journey and being updated as much as been possible to this point. And with certain towns that have got the events that are already happening, we know that there'll be opportunities for them to get involved in if they want to be when that time comes, when we're out of this horrible period of knowing whether it's going to happen or not. Because we've had to kind of imagine what might happen month by month for over 3 years, not knowing whether it will be the case. But the towns that have been involved, they've all had the opportunity to go forward, but I completely kind of understand the point that you're making.
Thank you. So you just, no, I don't want to go on and on about this point, but it's my concern that you just said that the town councils that wanted to be involved, or the towns that want to be involved, have had the opportunity, but I'm hearing very different from that. So is there still an opportunity for Wisbech Council to get involved in this project?
I'm sure there could be for anyone that wanted to be. So the process, because it was so labour intensive, we couldn't bring everyone in that room for every element of the writing, because it really did kind of take over the life of a number of people to get that application in. But at every moment where we could bring people together, those invitations went out to try and get people back into a room to share what was happening.
Thank you. Councillor Hoy?
Yeah, I just think, I mean, obviously this is not the first time this has happened. Obviously, we did ask as a town council about applying under the first round of the Cultural Fund, and we're told we weren't allowed to apply, and then another town council were funded. We didn't even bother this time because I just thought we're going to probably be turned down again. And then we've been trying to push at the door and say, and attend these meetings, and our clerk has paid, like obviously paid, has given his time to attend these events. And again, we've just been been snubbed. And I just think, to be honest, I think Fenland are not supporting us. I know it's a hard thing to hear, but I just don't think Fenland District Council are supporting us with regard to the arts, and that's fine. We can go it alone, like we'll just do our own thing. But that's a real shame, because I think there's a lot of opportunity to work together, really.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Before I come in, Carol, you would like to speak?
Yeah, I think the application's gone into the Arts Council, but my understanding of the application is it's not so rigid that it identifies, fixed amount of events or participants. So I think when we know if the Culture Partnership have been successful later on this month, fingers crossed, I think there'll be a lot more work that will then be undertaken in earnest to actually pin down in a lot more detail what specific projects will be led on by which partners. I think because we're in this little bit of limbo land at the moment, if there's no point at this present time having those conversations, because we don't know if we've got the money. I think once we've got the money, I'm assuming and looking to Jamie Lee to confirm that there'll be a further call to arms to ask people again what specifically they can offer in terms of those thematic groups, because then we'll ultimately have to account back to Arts Council of how we've spent the money. And so if those events or other activities fall under those themes, then I'm sure we'll be really keen to work with partners, including town and parish councils, to spend that money in that way. Is it okay to bring Jamie Lee in just to confirm if that's the case, Chairman?
Thank you, Carol. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there is a point to be made that we don't know if it's successful or not yet. But while we don't know that, I still would like to also, when you come back on Carol's point, could you actually just share a bit more about the project with the members? Because there are a lot of sort of abstract concepts that you discuss, and I know it's difficult because we don't know what direction it's going to take. We don't know if there's funding for it. But could you just go into a little bit more detail about the shape of the next 3 years? Thank you.
Yeah, I will try to. It sort of is based off kind of how I said earlier. There's the two sides. There's that one half that's really about improving what cultural leaders we have in the district now and for the future, and upskilling them and empowering them, and trying to give them everything we can in that period of time where hopefully we'll have the resource to do it, to do more and to do better and bigger. And then there's the kind of 6 weeks culmination at the end, which is about festival programming, because we know that that is really successful already with everything that already happens in the district, and it achieves really good audiences and they're known and loved. So first year will be a lot about that first half, that cultural leadership, and identifying who would like to go on that programme, who would benefit from that programme, who might be an emerging artist that we would like to kind of take through that programme, and hopefully then at the end of it have someone really strong and to be able to continue whatever that looks like for Fenland after 2028. And then also kind of beginning to experience things, so taking those groups in Fenland, they might not necessarily already be part of that project, but they might really benefit from festivals or events they already run themselves. Take them nationally, take them internationally maybe, and go and experience some really cool culture and learn from that, and think about what really amazing parts of that are inspiring and we can bring back here. But also getting ready for year 2, so that would be 2026, to spend some of that budget through 5 strands. So I'm going to try and remember these, but it's been a little while. So community, heritage, visual arts, literary and performance are the 5 strands, and there will be kind of organisations or project partners that can come on board and lead on those strands, and then sort of do their own thing, then have a commissions budget, so they might be able to decide that within the performance realm, for example, they're going to spend some money and they're going to drop it into this existing summer event that already happens in one of our towns, and see what happens and learn from that and take that further, so that there's kind of that shared learning for the cultural sector and an increased kind of confidence, ambition. We've had a go at it and we've learned about it, but also for audiences and residents to just enjoy some different stuff and more stuff that we know that already they're enjoying, and getting that ready for year 3. And by that point, when the project comes to an end, hopefully that sort of cohort, if you like, of cultural leaders have gone all the way along. Those people aren't defined yet, so that could really be anyone that thinks that they would get something out of this programme and would like to be part of it. By then, they'll hopefully have had some really amazing experiences and practice to be able to take it forward and continue that, so it doesn't just stop at that point. Hopefully that helps a little bit more filling in the gaps.
Thank you, Jamie Lee. I'm going to bring in Councillor Hicks, but just a quick word before I do. I think from what you've described, it would be a great opportunity for someone like Wisbech Town Council to get involved. I mean, they've got the rock fair. It just seems to lend itself really well. So I'll bring Councillor Hicks in now.
A bit of an elephant in the room, but I don't know what your proposed date is for the end of this, but there, with the changes to local government, none of us may be here actually doing this project. Sorry? Is it? Right, okay. And that was the first part of the question. And secondly, I'm going to say, because we'll probably take nothing lamb, but anyway, secondly, if we do get this money for this project, how proactive are you going to be contacting these councils, from what the council always said, and going out of your way? Because the standard answer is, oh, it was on the website. Well, I mean physically ringing up these people and getting them on board, not just posting it, actually getting on the phone and getting them involved with it.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks.
It's a really good point. At the moment, the thing that's going to change if we're successful with this is my role's going to change a bit. So from what I currently do here, more of my time will be spent just on this project. So that will mean that actually, in terms of my officer role, that I'll still be continuing, but actually production of this. But alongside those strands that I mentioned, the different art form strands, they'll all have leads. So there's going to be a lot of kind of energy from all across the different elements of it. Clarion Futures as kind of the administrative lead of it, taking hopefully some of the headaches of those practicalities, so that creatively, productively, we can be getting on involved in people. But the cultural leadership program, for example, that's going to need people to come on board with it and to make use of it. If we're able to put on all of this experiences and education, then we absolutely want people to come on board. So we're going to be looking to recruit them and, you know, offer them that opportunity proactively so they take the best chance of it.
But you're going to have a policy of actually ringing people up and getting them on board, I take it, yeah?
I'd be happy to make calls if I've got more time to do it.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions on this agenda item? Okay, thank you, Jamie Lee. Moving on to agenda item 6, Fenland Poet Laureate Awards. Thank you very much, Jamie Lee, for all your work in accepting the entries and anonymising them. And I understand you also had to type a few out that were handwritten. So that's really going above and beyond. So thank you very much for that. So obviously the deadline's now passed and the committee will be busy reading the entries, which by all accounts was a really enjoyable experience last year. The ceremony will take place on the 21st of March in March Town Hall. I think it's 7 for 7:30, so you're all very welcome to attend. I'm going to hand over, because I know Jamie Lee just wanted to say a little bit about the awards, and then we'll go to questions.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing major, just kind of reflecting on what you said. We closed for entries on Friday and we had 71 in total, which actually beats last year, which is really nice. And that was almost an even split again, 34 for the adults and 37 in the youth category. So you've all got lots of reading to do. And thank you to those that have already come to me with your shortlisting. I've left that open until midnight of next Monday, the 10th. And from that point, when I've had all of your feedback and shortlisting, that will go back to yourself, Chair, and to the other judge, so we can make those final decisions. From there, we'll be working again with the communications team to get the anthologies ready for the ceremony. But just to say that it's been lovely to see them all coming in again. We've had some support again from previous entrants, but also some really new ones, which is always exciting to see. One problem has been we've had so much interest from people that are out of district or sometimes even out of county, which is nice that we're reaching that far, but of course they're not eligible. But had they been, we would have been at 100 entries, which I think is amazing for that competition that is really reaching that far. So yeah, thank you, and hopefully it will be a really nice ceremony again in a few weeks.
Thank you, Jamie Lee. I don't necessarily think that people being interested in it is a problem, but I know what you mean, you know, it's out of the area. Does anyone have any questions on that item? If there are no questions, I'll go on to item 7, which is about the regional flag competition. So since Councillor Lloyd presented a motion at last full council as chair of this committee, Culture, Arts and Heritage, I thought I'd better do some research into it. And so I've had lengthy discussions with the Flag Institute, who said they're actually going to be watching this meeting. I don't know whether live or later on catch up, but they've certainly given a lot of time to me in explaining some key issues around flags. And so based on my discussions, and I'm very grateful to them, and just as a future point, they said they'd be happy to work with us, not just necessarily on designing of, you know, on a flag competition, but other things, you know, even poetry. So based on my discussions with the Flag Institute, I'd like to clarify a couple of questions that have arisen recently. The first concerns the Fenland District Council flag, which came into being in the 1970s after the last big boundary changes. This is not a community flag, but a council banner. So that flag would not be able to represent a community or a region. And there are also some issues with it being incorrectly adapted. So it was adapted from this crest here. And I have some information if anyone is interested about how it hasn't been adapted properly from the Flag Institute. So I can share that via email if anyone's interested. And then, so the second question concerns the flag that was proposed at the last full council meeting, That was designed within the last few years by a chap from Ely. Now, this flag hasn't been accepted by the Flag Institute, and so when I had a discussion with the Flag Institute, they told me that their preference is as follows, and I'm going to quote their statement, which they've given me permission to do. So where no historical design exists for a community, the Flag Institute's preference for the development of a design is through public competition. This maximises public involvement in the process and mandate for future adoption. The Flag Institute also make reference to any design meeting standards. So I'd just like to propose that now we just have a discussion about the idea of the Culture, Arts and Heritage Committee working in conjunction with or based on advice from the Flag Institute to host a regional flag competition. If members think this is a good idea, then we can have a subsequent discussion. So I'm going to throw it open to the floor now to get any thoughts. Councillor Hicks, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good idea to follow the guidelines there. Basically, I believe, and through my going uptown, that I've not had anybody what says they don't want a flag, basically. They all want a flag, what I've spoken to. Regional identity and stuff like that. And I think that's a good idea to probably have a competition. And that's all I want to say on the matter, really. Throw it out there, see what comes in, see the result of it.
Councillor Purser, then Councillor Nawaz.
It's on. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I also think that having a regional flag for Fenland, being very much a Fenman myself, is a really good idea. And I mean, I have actually heard people say, "What do we want a flag for? What do we need regional identity for?" But personally, as a Fenman, as Councillor Hicks is, I think it's a really, really nice idea. I have actually got a few things that I feel that could be. I know it's a competition actually out there for other people to actually put their designs on. I've got things that I feel should be reflected within the flag. The design that was actually had here before, to me, looks more like a lion than a fen tiger. There's actually a pub in town called the Red Lion, and that design there looks just like the design that's actually on the Red Lion itself. But I think it also, we're also very, very, I use the word fortunate, we're the only area, I believe, in the country where the motto, and I was actually discussing this with people beforehand, where because we in the Fens were actually drained by the Dutch, the motto is actually in Dutch, not in Latin. And I think that's a very important point to actually put across there. We've also got other people who are, shall we say, Fen heroes as well that could be reflected there. People like Hereward the Wake, I think he possibly could be reflected in that. Cornelius van Muyden, who's actually the engineer that came out. And I think maybe he could be reflected in there somewhere. And as we say, Boadicea as Boadicea or Boudica, whichever version you wish to put in there. Oliver Cromwell, who actually lived not too far away, but also as we fought the marauding Normans as they came over, we became known as the Fen Tigers as well, which I think also that could possibly be reflected in such a thing as well. And I think all these things could actually be looked at in some sort of design in the flag in some way. And also, obviously, as we have the great fields in the Fens, where we're doing the corn and that sort of thing, with the great agriculture in it, maybe that could be reflected as well. Just a few thoughts and ideas I had just sitting here, basically. And I think if that's just sitting here, what other imagination go out, sort of putting our minds to it. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Purser. You definitely put the heritage into the Culture, Arts and Heritage Committee. Thank you. Councillor Nawaz.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree entirely with the two previous speakers, particularly Councillor Purser. But I guess there's only so much you can reflect of a history in a flag. But it does need to be reflected. And I'm sure some of this will come out in the public consultation. my query is that who's going to have the ownership of this? Is it going to be just the Fenland district as it exists now, or the broader Fenland area which extends beyond the current district boundaries, and will they be involved in the public consultation, and how will the potential changes to local governance impact on this? Thank you.
I'll just come in and answer Councillor Nawaz's questions as best I can. So it would be a flag that would represent the Fens as a region, because it wouldn't be tied to the district. This is the council banner, which is not a community flag, so there's a big difference. We would be working with the Flag Institute, and so in that way it would, I know you mentioned ownership as in the area, but they would guide us on all the policies and procedures to get it officially accepted by the Flag Institute, or not us, but however if it is decided to go ahead with. So I hope that's helpful.
Sorry, the second part, what happens beyond the proposed changes in the local governance?
Sorry, I thought the subtext of my point about it not being tied to any council would be that it would be a community that exists outside and away from any kind of council role or influence over it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fine. So we obtain one, a formal flag, and then it's left out to the community as a whole of the entire population of Fenland. That's it. That's fine. Thank you.
So it would be governed by the Flag Institute. So that, in a way, would replace a council. The council of the Flag Institute would be overseeing it. Councillor Hicks.
Fenland's a very big area. People don't realise how big it is. It goes all the way up into Lincolnshire. And I think we have to be specific, have a ring fenced around what we would consider would be within the boundary of the flag, so we know, so it's set out. So, because otherwise it can be very woolly, can't it? And secondly, from my own personal point of view, I would like to make one point that I personally would like to see, in every shape or form it comes in, a fen tiger on the flag. That's what I'd like to see from my own point of view. And it's nice to have the other things, but that is what we're known as, the fen tigers. Sorry.
Councillor Purser.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, two or three things. It's sometimes been asked of me, yes, okay, so people want a Fenland flag. What the heck are you going to do with it? And the lights. Now, people probably can't see this, but I have a little badge on here. I bet very few people in this room actually know what the badge is. It's actually the badge of Cambridgeshire, which I actually wear with a great deal of pride. I've also got a little badge at home. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek for this, I know, but a little badge I'll wear at home from time to time is, I'm from Cambridgeshire and Fenland, what's your superpower? And I think sort of advertising it like that actually brings a bit of, I can't think of the right word, not tongue-in-cheek, a bit of pride into the area. I'm being very, very careful how I put this next point, because I noticed that I'm not mentioning names, but they know who they are. Somebody mentioned on one of our chats this morning, or someone should visit in Fenland. Oh yes, it is. My parents were born there, and it's very much in Fenland. But I think the whole area is basically would have the pride in the flag. To be perfectly honest with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Purser. Councillor Count, and then Councillor Forrest-Beard.
Yes, sorry, Chair, I don't mean to be a fly in the ointment, but I think I've got to say what's on my heart here. I don't have much time for any of this, to be honest. I really don't. I can take pride in a place without having a flag to wave about. I love the St George's flag because I was brought up with that, and that was what I recognised as being my country's flag. I like the United Kingdom because that, again, was what I was brought up with and represented us. I was never a fan of being in Europe or a European flag. And I just find that the more you put branding out there and say we're this or we're that, it's divisive. When I look at what we mean by the Fens, first of all, probably for most people, the reason the Fens name is still alive is because you have a Fenland District Council, so people have heard of that. And they probably equate the two, but the geography is very different. It's to do with the sort of watery mess that was here before the Dutch drained it. And we talk about the Dutch were being fought by, the Fen Tigers, as they were nicknamed by the Dutch as a derogatory term or a positive term for how tough the Finlandians were at that point in time. But I don't think that it's something that I particularly want to recognise. And to be honest, at that point in time, you was as likely to have the island of Wisbeach fighting the people of March as you were actually the Dutch. So, I don't really think that there's a lot to be proud of here, and it will not change for me whether we have a flag or not. But I do worry about the fact that when taxpayers entrust us with their money and we have officer time spent in committees like this, what we're going to get out of this at the end of the day, what am I going to turn to a resident of Fenland and say, you paid your taxes and I spent X amount of my time discussing this, and they will say, like they did to Councillor Purser, what would you do with the flag you got it? He's already told us that he has a Cambridgeshire badge. I'm a Cambridgeshire County Councillor. I didn't know a badge existed. I haven't got one. I wouldn't have recognised it. So that's the kind of value that I ascribe to these things. I'm sorry if I'm a fly in the ointment. I don't think it's cultural. I don't think it's heritage. I think it's sort of empire building for various individuals. And I don't have much time for it. Sorry.
Councillor Cowan, I sometimes get a bit twitchy about flags as well, but and I made a very similar point in the last full council meeting, but because there's so much community chatter about this issue, a lot of it very negative, I felt that it was the right thing to bring it to the Cultural Arts and Heritage Committee and have an open and frank discussion about it. Thank you for your points. Councillor Foyce-Beard.
Thank you. I'm not too sure how I'm going to follow on from that. Just a few questions. One, who will be collating, if you were to go ahead with it, the designs? And two, who would be judging the designs?
We have no idea at this stage, so I think that's a next round of conversations that can be had after we decide if it's something we'll be interested in. I'll go Councillor Hoy, Councillor Hicks, Councillor Nawaz.
So I didn't want to speak because I didn't want to be the meanie in the room again. Steve Cant did it for me, so it's got a bit of cover, I think. A comment was referenced earlier to Somersham. Just to clarify, I said it wasn't in the parliamentary constituency of North East Cambridgeshire, which it isn't. It's in, actually, I don't know if it's in Huntingdonshire or not, but it's irrelevant. Anyway, I know there's been some community chatter, but I think we need to be really careful that we don't over egg how bothered people are. So I'm not saying, everyone speaks, but you do see people when you're out and about, people do talk to you. In Wisbeach, the number one issue that's raised is the casino building. Number two issue is crime and street drinking and drug use. I've never heard anyone mention to me a flag, like good or bad. They've never said we don't want a flag, they've said we do want a flag. Literally nobody mentions it to me. And I do take the point as well, what Councillor Count's saying, we're spending an inordinate amount of time on this when actually there are really big serious issues facing us as a district and as a county and as a nation really, that I just think personally it's a bit of a waste of time. I mean, I'm not massively dead against it. I'm not going to die in a ditch over it. If someone really wants to do it, I'm not going to be so angry I just refuse to do it. But I just think I just don't necessarily see what value it's going to bring to us.
Thank you. Councillor Hicks.
Yeah, in the reply to Councillor Hoy, that is the polar opposite to what I hear in the streets in March. That's as an elected representative of my ward, I have to represent what people want, and they want it. So that's as far as it goes. Regarding those other matters, that's probably things for other committees, not for us. We're here to discuss this particular issue, not about drink and drugs and stuff in Wisbeach, to be fair. So that is the agenda. What's on our agenda? That's what we've got to decide here today.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. Councillor Nawaz.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Count and Councillor Hoy, for a very refreshing dissent. injects a totally different perspective into this. But if I may say that, price of things isn't everything. Price is different from value, and the value that anything embodies is very subjective and lies within the hearts of the individuals. And I would say that let it go out to public consultation. We're not going to have a referendum over this. But so we're not going to invest as much time as it may appear in this, but it would be useful to know, to have some idea as to how much time and how much money and what sort of budget we are thinking about. If it is a large amount, then I would agree. There are many more pressing issues that communities have, but this may well serve as a distraction from some of those pressing issues, even though it would be momentarily, but there it is. So where I would encourage and enjoy development of council accounts angle on this, I would say that let us have more of a public debate and let us be the instigators of that debate. And I would take it with much more of a lighter touch than perhaps some of other colleagues would think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nawaz. Councillor Cow.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to point out that I agree with virtually with a lot of things that everybody said. I'm going to pull them out to a certain degree. So, Chair, you said the right place for this open and frank discussion is here, and I do agree with you. If there's been a lot of pressure through Councillor Hicks, through yourself in your local areas to have this debate, we had a full council debate, then the right place for it is the Culture and Arts Heritage Committee. And I think it's right to have an open and frank discussion, and the fact that I don't chime with everybody else is part of an open and frank discussion. I'd agree with Councillor Hoy. This is not something I'm going to die in a ditch over, but I'd feel remiss if I sat here with a different point of view to everybody else and just went, well, I ought to keep quiet, really, because I'm sticking out a sore thumb. But I'm just here to give you my view, and that doesn't make it right or wrong, because as Councillor Nawaz quite rightly pointed out, the value is in the eye of the beholder. And whilst it holds little value for me, I do recognise that other people put a different value on these sort of things, and I'm quite prepared to go with the majority, as we all should be in any democracy, In terms of Councillor Hicks saying that people are approaching him about this, I haven't, I live nearby, I haven't, so again, I agree with Councillor Hoy. But if people have spoken to you about it, and they've certainly spoken to the chair about it, then this is the right place for that discussion. So many things I agree with. I prefer to have the Fen Liger than the Fen Tiger. That's not the traditional lion and tiger mix. That's a mixture of a lion and a tiger, because these things were never over here at all whatsoever. And I do think that if people had the imagination for a new flag, there are a lot of things that would be better suited, as Councillor Purser said. If I've missed anybody out, Lucy, I apologise, but no doubt I agree with you as well. But I'm happy to go ahead, but I think it would have been remiss of me just to sit here and say that I think that this is a great thing for Fens, because it doesn't chime with my value, but I understand it chimes with others. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think you've actually rounded up the discussion really well. So thank you for doing my job for me. What I'll do, if in agreement, I'll go back to the Flag Institute and I'll put all this across to them, and we can sort of park it for now, and then come back and, maybe, based on what they've said, and possibly have a public consultation. But I need to find out what that will involve, there's a cost element and all of this sort of thing. So I'll find out that information, and then we can discuss it at a future Culture, Arts and Heritage meeting when I've got more information from them. Okay, if that's it. Okay. So, agenda item 8 is any other business. Would any member like to raise anything under this agenda item? Okay, I don't see any hands up. So, agenda item 9 are items under which the chairman has deemed urgent. There are none, so this concludes the agenda today, and I declare the meeting closed.